We've all been there. You look at the world around you and you ask this really frustrating question. Why is it that the person who works so hard, who does everything right, still struggles, while someone else, who seems to do nothing at all, just sails through life with all the rewards? Well, today we're going to try to crack the code on this feeling of unfairness by looking at effort, destiny, and the bigger picture that we might just be missing.
Let's just dive right in with a thought that really gets to the heart of this whole thing. It's a question a lot of us have probably asked ourselves in one way or another. Should I take all the precautions and live this really restricted, suffocated life? Or should I just live freely and, die when it's my time? This single question just perfectly captures that tension we all feel.
And this dilemma, it leaves us to something we see every single day. A confusing reality that I like to call the effort paradox. It's that huge disconnect between what we put in and what we seem to get out.
I mean, we all know these two kinds of people, right? On one hand, you've got the striver. This is the person who takes all the precautions, what you might call perhaze. They're managing their diet, their health, their studies. They work hard and follow all the rules. They're doing everything by the book. But then you look at the outcomes and it just feels completely backward, doesn't it? The striver, after all that work, still faces illness or doesn't get the job. Meanwhile, the coaster, the person who's been living carelessly, seems perfectly healthy and successful. This right here, this is the paradox that makes us throw our hands up and ask, what's the point of even trying? So when you see this paradox play out over and over again, it's really easy to fall into some very common but ultimately pretty flawed ways of thinking. Let's break down these mental traps.
This is the big one. It becomes the go-to explanation in our minds. We see the person who was so careful get sick, and we immediately say, see, it doesn't matter. What's meant to happen will happen. And this just reinforces this deep, almost fatalistic belief that our individual efforts, they don't really count in the grand scheme of things.
And let's be real for a minute. Haven't we all felt this way? You put in the hours, you make the sacrifices, you do everything you're supposed to do, and the result you wanted just doesn't happen. It's in that moment of disappointment that the thought creeps in, why am I even bothering? This is such a critical moment for our entire mindset. But here's a thought. What if we're only looking at half the picture? What if there's a whole other evaluation system going on that we just can't see? Let's explore this idea of an unseen scorecard. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. There's this crucial concept called sa'i. Now, in Arabic, this word means so much more than just effort. It's a conscious, intentional striving. It's the effort you make when you're guided by awareness and knowledge. It's the complete opposite of just going through the motions. And this verse just brilliantly illustrates this divine principle. The promise here isn't tied to the result you get in this world. No, the promise is tied directly to your sa'i, to your conscious, intentional striving. Realizing this is a total game changer. So let's try to picture this unseen scorecard. For the conscious striver, every single moment of effort, every time they control an impulse, every step they take based on knowledge, it gets a point. It's recorded. It's valued. But on the other side, for the careless person, every time they ignore good advice, every time they let desire win over what they know is right, that's also marked down. Every choice is being tallied, even if we can't see the scoreboard. This brings us to a really critical question, one we all have to ask ourselves. What is actually driving my actions? Is it conscious knowledge, or is it just my uncontrolled desires? The sources point to this incredibly powerful internal battle we all face. It's a battle against what's called the nefs, our lower self, our base impulses and desires. And this verse asks such a piercing question, right? Have you ever seen someone who makes their own desire their god? Who lets their momentary wants become the ultimate authority in their life? And this slide basically shows the mental loop that so many of us can get trapped in. It's so relatable. First, an impulse appears. I really want that unhealthy snack. Second, you ignore what you know, that it's a bad choice. Third, here come the excuses. Oh, just this once, or what's meant to be will be. And finally, you act on the desire. That's the path of letting your nafs win.
So now that we can see this other dimension, this unseen scorecard, we can start to redefine the true purpose and the real value of all our efforts.
I mean, just look at this. The divine promise is repeated again and again and again. Your sight, your conscious striving will be appreciated. It will be recompensed. You will be pleased with it. The focus is always, always on the quality of your effort, not the worldly outcome. The message is crystal clear.
Your conscious striving is never, ever wasted. And this brings us to a really crucial distinction we have to make. There is a huge difference between facing a trial that's part of a bigger divine plan and facing an illness or a setback that is the direct result of our own carelessness. One is a test of our character. The other is simply a consequence of our choices. So what does this all mean? It means our efforts absolutely matter in this life too. The sources suggest that for each of us, there might be a certain God-given potential for our lifespan, but it's our lifestyle, our precautions, our psi that determines the quality of the life we live within that potential, whether we spend it in health and strength or in sickness and regret. So, as we start to wrap this up, how does this all come together? Well, it all leads us to one final, really powerful question that kind of reframes this entire debate. And this right here, this is the ultimate shift in perspective. If your effort is only for the worldly result, the job, the grade, the perfect bill of health, you will always be vulnerable to frustration and giving up. But if your effort is for the one who sees and values every single conscious choice you make, then no effort is ever wasted. You're freed from the tyranny of results. You're empowered to focus on what truly, truly counts, your sincere, conscious striving. Just so you know, this explainer is based on a conversation and a talk by Sobia. Because it's an AI-generated summary, some of the wording might be a little different from her original sentences. You can definitely leave your comments and questions below. And for more detailed learning, you can always reach out using the contact info on the screen. Thanks so much for joining us.